Hey everybody, welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast, where we're helping ODs all over the country make better and better decisions around their money, their careers, and their practices. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, an independent financial planning firm just for optometrists nationwide. And on today's episode, I am excited to welcome to the podcast Dr. Kara Foster, who is the owner of and optometrist at I Care For You in North Carolina. And Dr. Foster talks with me all about her journey in transitioning away from and getting away from vision plans in her practice to a direct care or fee-for-service business model. And we take sort of a case study approach to seeing what her practice was like before the transition, why she made that transition, how she did it, and what did her practice look like on the other side. So I know this has been a big and important topic in terms of what should private independent optometry practices do with vision plans? How should they best manage it? And it's been fun for me as someone who's looking from the outside in and seeing how do different practices handle that challenge, because there's definitely different approaches. I thought Dr. Foster's approach was fantastic, and hopefully it helps you as well in making those decisions. And something that slipped my mind over the last couple episodes is that we're already at episode 54, which means it's already been a full year of running this podcast. And I just want to say with that, thank you so much for everyone who has been listening along the way. I know those early episodes were probably pretty raw, but appreciate your time and attention and the feedback I've gotten from you privately by email. Appreciate all that. I'm looking forward to continuing to make this a better and better resource for you and your profession. And if you've enjoyed the podcast along the way, please leave a review. It's helpful for me to see your feedback, and it helps get this content in front of more optometrists so they can make smarter, better informed decisions with their career, their finances, and their practice. So with that, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at Evon, EVON, at optometrywealth.com. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to see covered in future episodes, reach out. Always happy to see that. And you can check out all the links and resources we mentioned in the episode in the show notes, which you can find at the Education Hub at my website, www.optometrywealth.com. And while you're there, feel free to schedule a no-commitment introductory call. We can talk about whatever's on your mind financially, and you can learn about how we serve optometrists nationwide. If you're not ready to chat, for my optometry listeners, I am offering free financial health assessments where I'll take a look at different health metrics about your finances, and I'll send you a short assessment video. I'll give you sort of a guide to what your financial scores are telling you, some of my thoughts about it, and maybe even some next actions to consider. So a link to that will be in the show notes. And that being said, without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Kara Foster. Welcome back, everybody, to the Optometry Money Podcast. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, and I am thrilled to welcome to the show today Dr. Kara Foster, owner of I Care For You in North Carolina. Kara, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Evon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to kind of share my experience with you guys today. Thank you.
Yeah, I came across your name first by I think a pretty recent review of Optometric Business article you did. The title of this one is How I Freed My Practice from Managed Care to Achieve a $564 revenue per exam, dollar revenue per exam. And that's quite the title there. Definitely got my attention, but I'm excited to chat with you about your experience of, as you wrote about, freeing yourself from vision plans and managed care to create more independence in your own practice. Because I think this is such an important big topic right now of what to do with vision plans, what to do with managed care.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create or how do practices create more independence inside of independent optometry in terms of making decisions with their practice over profitability? Should you not use vision plans? Are they a marketing expense? Are they a partner? What are they? And maybe this has been a big topic for a long time. And it's been fascinating for me as someone looking from the outside in, just seeing these conversations unfold and seeing how different owners and practitioners feel about their own profession and the future of their profession. But I'd like to hear in just your own words, in your experience, what is or has been the relationship between independent eye care and managed care? And how has managed care impacted private practice?
I think that in optometry and probably healthcare in general, we really feel like we have to use managed care that's kind of promoted to us as a way to bring patients to our practice. But I really found after being in, starting my own practice as managed care and practicing previously in a managed care office where, kind of asking our patients where they're coming from and how they're finding us, it didn't really feel like a lot of patients were finding us through a managed care system. And with all the drawbacks of being in network, I felt like there were better ways that we could go about getting our patients. If that was the biggest reason that we got patients was because of the marketing that they did for us in managed care.
Interesting. So maybe the perception is that this is a way to increase the volume in the practice, but you had found that your patients weren't really starting with their vision plans, or at least that's not where a lot of the traffic came from. Am I understanding that correctly?
Not in my office or the previous office I had worked in. A lot of patients, but, if really, I feel like in private practice, it seems like when you take good care of your patients, a lot of it is that word of mouth referral. And that's a way that direct care actually helps too, because with the word of mouth referral, patients can tell their friends about it. We do have to be able to explain it well, but also the patients kind of already know coming in that they're getting a different kind of experience. And I think when any patient comes to a private practice, they're looking for that different experience. This is a good way, I feel like, for us to be able to provide that for them.
Got it. And you mentioned direct care, which is essentially a fee for service business model.
Mhm.
What does that mean? How does that actually work in practice?
In practice, really, we just are very open and upfront about our prices. We have everything on our website. When patients call, we explain everything to them about what their final price is going to be. We are able to, we do bill out of network for their insurance companies, but we just try to be kind of open and upfront with what our pricing is so that they know what to expect right from the very beginning.
So just pretty straightforward, transparent.
Mm-hmm.
The patient is paying you directly for your services. I mean, it sounds like it makes a whole lot of sense. I as a consumer, like that, and even for my own business, I basically mirror that same thing. That makes a whole lot of sense, and it seems like it makes would you say it just makes a better relationship between the patient and the provider, and that there's no third parties to worry about? What have you seen there?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like patients do sometimes feel a little bit suspicious about like not really understanding their insurance. Not a whole lot of people really understand the ins and out of their insurance companies, and we're kind of meant to explain that to them. But I feel like if we can explain it to them in this more of like a direct care and how we can spend more time with them, and we don't have to really nickel and dime them for services or for add-ons to their glasses that we really think would be a benefit to them, then it helps us to be able to provide better care. And when they give us that opportunity and we can kind of earn their trust to provide a direct care experience, I think that it really helps, just helps to create a better overall healthcare experience and hopefully help improve the healthcare system overall to be able to take out that middleman of insurance and spend more time and do the testing that we need and develop those deeper relationships with our patients.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I want to dive into how that transition happened from
Mm-hmm.
getting away from the vision plans to getting into this more direct care business model, and
Mm-hmm.
why you went that direction, and some of the things you looked at. And the first thing I want to ask is just kind of get a feel, and so the listener can get a feel of your practice before that transition, like what that practice looked like. And I want to even start with background a little bit before
Mm-hmm.
that. What got you into optometry initially, and what eventually led to you owning your own practice?
Well, yeah, optometry in general, I mean, I've always needed glasses. I've always loved kind of healthcare and kind of figuring things out and how to help people, just really just be able to improve people's lives. And, I think eye care is so great because people come in, like they're happy to see you, you can help them. It's also great to be able to do mission work. I love doing like mission trips in Haiti. I'm going to Guatemala later this year. So there's a lot of like value in that I see too. And really, I just feel like optometry is a great opportunity to have a private practice where a lot of, other kind of medical professions, you end up working in a hospital setting where I
Yeah.
really enjoy the relationships and the relationship building that I get with my patients. And so I went to optometry school in Boston. I graduated in 2009. I'm a wife and a mom of three girls, and I really love having time to like build with my family and relationships, and which is probably how I kind of got started in this direct care idea. But for the first 6 years after I graduated, I worked in a really nice private practice, but it was very insurance based. I thought I learned a lot about running a private practice and, kind of a little bit about how insurance works. But I felt like we were being rushed, seeing a lot of patients. And then, I feel like a lot of people feel that way. But we were seeing, 4 to 5 patients an hour, working 5 to 6 days a week, which is kind of how I decided to open my own practice. My daughter was born in 2013. And I just really decided at that time that I wanted to focus more on family time and creating a better work-life balance. Because obviously practice owners have so much more time, right? I don't know that as an employee really, but but after so that's where really kind of I got started wanting to build a different kind of practice, not a practice where I spent, only 10, 15 minutes with the patient. I really wanted to develop those relationships.
Yeah.
So I wanted like a true kind of family practice where my daughter could come, after school sometimes. So I opened my office. It's called I Care for You in early 2015. And I had longer exam times. But, not knowing sort of the back end of the insurances, we did accept all the vision and medical insurances for the first 2 years of my practice. So I feel like we kind of looked like a regular private practice, trying to navigate like loopholes, being paid by insurance companies, kind of seeing the sad reimbursement checks come in and just seeing patients day in and day out, but starting to realize that I might not really be able to continue that in a sustainable way, doing things the way I wanted with the longer exam times. And, I really wanted to be able to include extra testing too with, the insurance companies kind of limit that as well. So.
Yeah. And I feel like that's you're right in that. Okay. There's a lot more that comes with private practice ownership than maybe you know before going into it. But at least you have that opportunity to sort of craft the business that you want around the lifestyle that you want. So you do get sort of that freedom and opportunity there, along with all the other stuff that comes with that responsibility. But so you mentioned that you started out as sort of I guess the typical or average private practice. You're on all the insurance plans. Why did you feel like that was the route to go? Did you feel like that was just typical? Like you sort of had no choice? I mean, what sort of led you initially that down that direction?
Yeah, well, I guess I just have never seen it done any other way. I thought that was the way that you do all the private practices that I've seen and, worked at and been a part of throughout my, school and, professional career. I really hadn't seen anybody just do it, just direct care only. Like I'm not taking insurance. There's so many vision plans and, the vision plans kind of come present to you even in optometry school. So that's really all I feel like. So.
Mm. Describe like your geography, like your patient base. What does that look like for your practice?
I'm outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, which is a growing area. We've got a lot of growth coming in this area, but I feel like it's not just we do have a lot of tech and pharmaceuticals here and people who work from home and really can. I feel like patients who, if we can explain the value of direct care, they can afford to pay for it and then have the reimbursement come in. But I also feel like there's a little bit of confusion thinking that direct care is a more expensive way for patients, where I actually think it disperses healthcare costs across the board. And it's really more affordable overall, especially when you're not paying for a vision plan. So we do have sort of I have a very good, younger, healthier patient base, people who, are able to listen and understand if we can explain direct care properly to them.
Got it. Okay. And in terms of for the listener who maybe isn't as familiar or hasn't gotten into either private practice or definitely private practice ownership, how exactly does the collection of revenue work when you're working primarily with vision plans?
Well, it's a little bit of a process. I mean, and actually, it's been a little while since I've done it, so I don't know if anything's changed, but when you're in network with the insurance, you're submitting and waiting, up to 90 days for a reimbursement check. You could submit for $130 contact lens fit and, get $3 back. So, if you want to really spend time and explain with patients, you can't really spend that time and be able to get those low reimbursement checks. It just doesn't line up. So.
Got it. So there's potentially a delay between when you provide the service and when you actually get the reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
The reimbursement is maybe smaller than you're anticipating. I'm sure there's staff time involved, right? With submitting the claim, following up on it, making sure that there's revenue collected. So I'm sure there's people involved in the practice having to follow up on all this. And so what were
Mm-hmm.
you seeing in your practice then at that point that made you say, okay, I need to start making a change around here? What were you seeing?
Mm-hmm.
What were you feeling? What were you noticing?
hmm Well, the insurance checks were coming in, not what we expected really. And so I was really thinking that I needed to start, maybe shortening my exam times and maybe even having an insurance biller come in, somebody who really understood the system a little bit better, make sure I wasn't missing out on any lost revenue potentially that I could have been billing for that I wasn't. So I was looking at maybe hiring an insurance biller, but to be able to do that, I'd have to like shorten my exam times, and then to shorten my exam times, I'd have to hire a technician. And part of what I wanted with my practice was to keep it really small and family oriented.
Mm,
I at the time and still now I have a front desk person and an optician. And I really wanted to keep it that small, kind of people recognize our faces each year when they come in. We have that kind of comfortable family feel. So I didn't want to do that. And so that's kind of where I started thinking to myself, like, what else is there? There's got to be something else. What else can we do? So
yeah. So you're noticing. Yeah, I guess it's like you're trying to find out like what are the tips and tricks around making the most out of these vision plans? Like how can I squeeze more out?
yeah, like I feel
And
like that's what people feel like they have to do, right?
yeah,
But is there a better way? I think there is now.
or volume. Right? You're
Yeah,
even the other alternative is to make that up with volume, and
right.
that definitely wasn't the practice you wanted. And it just sounds exhausting, to be honest.
Yes, exactly. Is that how you want to spend your day at work? I mean, we spend so much of our time at work every day with people. We want our people to be happy, our team too, because nobody really wants to be like trying to fight the system, right? I feel like direct care helps encourage people. It feels like we're doing something that to better the healthcare system, to be not nickel and diming our patients, to be open and straightforward. It just feels like a nicer overall way every day. And that's how we spend our days, so much of our day. Why not make it a better overall day?
Right, right, right. And so you went down the road then. You thought about it. I'm sure I'm just curious to know like how you thought about going down the decision to say, okay, we're going to direct care. We're going to remove the vision plans. We're just going to be totally independent in our pricing, in our relationship with our patient. I've heard a lot of ways to go about that. You could have trimmed just a certain amount of vision plans, or you
Mm-hmm.
could have done something different. Why go that direction? What did you look at? How did you analyze that situation to say, okay, this is the direction we're going?
Well, I had not heard of direct care in eye care at all, but I kind of started researching other practices, other professions, I guess, that do it. And it's not big, but it's done in primary care. A lot of dentists kind of do it as a fee for service system. So I do feel like it's out there, and patients have heard of it in other kind of capacities. And there's a lot of talk about in eye care about like dropping plans one by one. But I tried to think about how that would sound when I was explaining it to my patients, if they would really understand. And I feel like it is more of like, well, my office is offering this insurance plan and they don't like it because it doesn't pay enough. Whereas if I kind of said it in a way that I dropped all vision plans, I dropped everything really, then everybody's paying the same across the board. It's not
Mm,
because one plan plays less than another. It's because I wanted to change the system and just create like a better environment, which I didn't feel like I felt like it presented differently to the patient. So I mean, I know it was a new system, and I honestly didn't know if it would work at first, but I figured it was worth trying. So,
uh, interesting. Yeah, you wanted to, I guess, avoid that thought of favoritism or something like that based on
hmm
revenue or whatever that was.
yeah,
Going back to Kara back then, I guess this was 2017. You'd said.
yep, that was early 2017. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to you back then, uh, I'm sure you mentioned you weren't sure it would work. What were some of the fears or uncertainty that may have caused you hesitation or maybe may have almost held you back from doing it altogether?
Well, I think explaining it to patients is the biggest thing. And even still now, I mean, that's the biggest thing that's very important. Number one on the phone when patients call is to make sure that they understand what direct care is and why we do it, not just that we don't take their plans. Because still, a lot of the number one questions we get when we answer the phone is, do you take this plan? And if you just say no right off the bat, then sometimes that's all they hear. So, and I thought that if nobody came in, I mean, there was a potential that I could be looking for another job pretty soon.
Yeah.
But I figured there are opportunities, so I figured I could always find another job if I needed to. And at least I knew that I would have tried and that I was trying to really work for myself, because under the private practice system, under the insurance companies, it just feels like we're not really working for ourselves. We're still having to work around what we're doing with these insurance companies, and it doesn't feel like we could do things the way we want. And I figured if I'm going to work for somebody else, I might as well at least try it my way. So
I love that, because I feel like I mean, you looked at this situation, you were unhappy with it, you wanted to take your business a different direction, and then you made a decision, you acted on it, and you took a risk. I mean, you took a measured risk in your business, and that's often what it takes in driving a successful business forward. And I feel like a lot of the thought around private practice optometry, well, maybe not a lot, maybe from some, is that I feel like there's sort of a sense of defeat sometimes to where we have vision plans and it's just the way it is. And, the
exactly.
future's bleak because this is just the way it is. And I, of course, don't know nearly enough about the ins and outs of optometry to really give an opinion, but it just seems like there's a sense of defeat, but you took initiative. Like you made decisions. You saw it was your own business and you made decisions to improve it. So you really had a lot of intentionality there. And where my brain goes to when I think about this and I hear what you're saying is I'm imagining a spreadsheet with revenue per exam, how many potential patients could you have lost?
Great.
What would that look like?
Right.
So how did you look at that? Because I know you probably would have looked at the revenue you are receiving, what you might expect in terms of patients that fall away. Like, how did you think about the math behind the decision?
Well, obviously switching to a new system, we weren't exactly sure like what our revenue would be once patients started coming in, how well they'd want to actually buy glasses from us when they weren't able to be in network with their insurances. But it actually, another side note here is it's been kind of impressive that not having to use the insurance company labs, we are actually able to get a lot better pricing on quality products
Wow.
things that we feel like the insurance companies kind of make you feel like, and a lot of in private practice, you feel like you have to be a part of some groups that you can get these discounts. And I'll just say that it's remarkable how much people are willing to work with you when you don't have all those kind of systems in place, kind of holding you back. So, but I knew that there would be a few patients who were lost. I mean, there's always those people who call and eat up so much of your staff time asking about their insurance benefits, and then you're calling the insurance and they want to order just the amount of contacts that their insurance company covers. And I mean, that takes a lot of staff time too. So we figured there'd be a few people that we lost, and we figured that there would be people who would hopefully come see us because they value the kind of service that we provide. And there's some people who are just looking for the cheapest option out there, but those aren't the people who enjoy coming to us and appreciate the kind of service that we provide. So, and I think the people that do appreciate the kind of service that we provide are willing to pay for it. So it was kind of just a wait and see kind of thing. Hopefully we can explain it to patients in a way that they'll appreciate the value that we're adding to their exams. And eye care is so important. It's your vision is so important. I just saw that it's 90% of our stimuli is coming in through our eyes, and we just go anywhere in our factory, like going through a factory in our eye care. I feel like we need to show patients that they need to value their eye care, and this is a good way to do it. So,
yeah. Let's talk. So, okay. So you made a decision. You're going that direction. Let's talk about this transition. Like, how do you actually free yourself from managed care and move on to this new way of doing business? Where do you start? I mean, do you start with notifying the insurance companies? Like, where do you even start?
So yeah, I guess once I decided that I wanted to just drop all of the insurance companies or insurance plans, everything, I decided to do over about a 3-month period. So just to give our patients time to like put everything together, we did put together scripts and frequently asked questions, how to explain things in optical and on the phone, and just really to help answer patient questions. I did notify the insurance companies as of a certain date, 3 months down, that I wanted to drop. And I sent out patients a letter. I put together a letter explaining. I made myself available for if they had any questions about why we were doing this. And I actually sent out like I put together what I thought would be a fair kind of comprehensive price, maybe lower than the prices that would be if we billed the insurance company, but everybody's paying across the board, and that's the price that we're getting, or that's the payment that we're getting at the time of service. So it evened it out and made it much more sustainable. So I emailed all that pricing out to our patients. I mailed them a letter that I signed them myself. And I gave them time to come in case they did want to use their insurance benefits before we went out of network. So it was a little bit of a process, but I would say we did everything in about 3 months. So
Okay, so from start to finish, about 3 months. 3 months later, you're off the plans.
Yep.
Did the insurance companies reach out to patients? Like, was there any headaches in dealing with that side of it after you've notified them?
I don't know that the insurance companies reached out to patients. I do feel like in the last couple of years, it seems like they are dropping out of network benefits. So I feel like it's a little bit of a response to direct care that they don't want to do out of network benefits, because we will still, we have a software that will file or we'll send a real quick paper claim for our patients so that they'll get the reimbursement back. And we tell them what an estimate might be of what they're, but it takes about 1 minute in office for each patient. It's very easy. If the insurance payment comes back, it comes back to them, or they reach out to their insurance company. But I do feel there's a little bit of a pushback from the insurance companies in that regard. But I feel like we still have a really good system, and we've really fine-tuned our process over the years of explaining it well to patients, and it seems like people are very understanding and accepting of it. And like I said, people value the service, and when they value it, they are willing to pay for it, and it's not super expensive. So
Yeah. And I feel like maybe that's one of the biggest fears is what are patients going to think? What are they going to say? And how are you going to describe it and communicate it well to patients? What are, can you tell me a little bit about some of the scripts you put together? Like, what are some of the common questions you anticipated? How did you think about putting those scripts together?
Well, I think we just explained it, like I kind of said earlier, I do think it's really important to not, right off the bat, tell people no, that we don't take their insurance plan. We tell them, if somebody calls, we say, well, let me tell you a little bit about our practice. We're a direct care practice. And what that means is it's a flat rate across the board. This is how much it's going to be. This is what we include. And, if you do have any issues or need to come back in for a follow-up, it's no additional charge. So we kind of put that together in that way to explain it to patients.
Got it. It sounds like you're highlighting the benefits of being a direct care
Add the value
provider.
first. Yeah.
Yeah. You're highlighting how is that going to provide value to the patient? It sounds like you're really highlighting what that does to enhance that patient experience, the quality of your interactions. How did you think about changing your prices? You said you wanted to make it sort of fair across the board. How did you think about adjusting your prices, either up or down?
I think I just really thought about what, if they were to ask their insurance company what's billed, like what would be something that somebody would be willing to pay for an exam, knowing maybe they might get $40 or $50 back from their insurance companies, or even if they don't get anything back at all, what would be a fair once a year price for somebody to come in and pay? What would I think would be fair? What would my family think would be fair? I think that a lot of times, because we work at the insurance companies, healthcare prices in general seem artificially inflated because we have to bill a certain amount to be able to get our reimbursements back. So people look at healthcare costs and think they look really exorbitant. So if I make it available and make it seem affordable and just explain it to patients that what they see is what they get, it's all included, then it just makes it more manageable. So, and nobody really likes having to call their insurance company and send a hold, and nobody who's working with the insurance company seems super happy. I just wanted to create a happier and more simplified process for everybody.
Yeah. And in terms of what you were billing, like your gross price for your service, it seems like that may have been lower than what the insurance you would have done with you're connected to the insurance companies. What about the net revenue, like what you were actually collecting per
Like
exam?
much. Yeah, I mean, we're collecting at least like 50% higher than what we would have, at least, on a good end. It's more fair for the patients. We actually get paid for our contact lens fittings, so I don't mind seeing them back for follow-ups as many as they need to, and giving them the trials. Whereas if you're not really getting paid for it, then it's hard to want to see them back and take up that chair time for contact lens follow-ups. But I really enjoy being able to like troubleshoot with patients, and they really appreciate it too, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. I looked through your article, and I wanted to put some math to this because I think that's a really
Hmm.
important point, is that even though your price,
Right.
your gross price was lower, the
Hmm.
amount you're collecting was higher and sooner.
Hmm.
You were getting it right away. So from a
Yeah.
cash flow perspective, it was helping your practice. So I wanted to look at, because in your article you'd mentioned going from $300 average per exam, revenue
Hmm.
per exam, to 450, and then later on 564. Right?
Yes.
Am I
Yeah.
okay? So I wanted to look at, if at different annual revenue points, from
Hmm.
600,000, 800,000, a million. If you had an average $300 revenue per exam, 450 and 564, how many patients would you need to see per year to get that at those price points? And then I wanted to see, how much could you lose in order
Hmm.
to, how many patients or exams could you lose in order to keep that same annual revenue? And going from $300 revenue per exam on
Hmm.
average
Hmm.
to 450, you could have lost a third of your patients
Yeah,
and still
absolutely.
had the same amount of revenue.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah,
With
we did not see a loss at the beginning. We did lose a few patients at the beginning, but they were the patients who, ran us around in circles. And really, we didn't create a lot of profit on. So now we see patients who appreciate us, and obviously, we make a lot more money now, but we were able to lose those patients without seeing any drop in our revenue at all.
Yeah, and even going higher, if you're at
Yeah.
500, 564, you could have lost almost half of your patients and still maintain that revenue,
Yeah. I
seeing
mean, we can
less,
hit $1 million seeing like 8 to 10 patients a day.
which is,
It's not great.
for the
Yeah.
listener, like, put this on an Excel spreadsheet and do some math, and just tell yourself, like, in the worst case scenario, what would that in reality do to my revenue and profit? So that, because yes, there's risk. There's risk that patients leave. There's risk that patients don't perceive it well. But the reward may make it absolutely worth it, even if those patients
Yeah.
leave, which is just
Hmm.
incredible.
Hmm.
I want to ask about that software that you use. Is that Anagram? Is
It
that the one that
is.
you're
It's
using? Okay.
Anagram. And actually, Anagram it was just kind of coming around right around the time that I think they started right around early 2017 or so, or maybe it was 2016. So right around the time I kind of decided to go to direct care. It was kind of hand in hand. I was like, oh, look, Anagram can do this. So
How exactly does that work?
it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we just pull it up. They have a cloud-based software. We just type up the patient information. It tells us an estimate. And sometimes it doesn't pull up for every vision plan. So we'll have an estimate of what reimbursements would be in the area. And we always tell patients anyway, it's not a definite, it should come back to you in about 6 weeks or so. It looks like you're going to get about $40 back on the exam or whatever it is. And then we just, it's real. We can do it before they're out of the office. It takes 1 second, and then it comes straight back to them. So
Got it.
it's very little work on our end, but we're able to still let them use their insurance. And I think that helps them too, because if they have insurance, they don't want to be paying for something they're not using. So
Yeah.
with direct care, you can get the lower across the board pricing, and then we can still file for the insurance. So.
So that, I mean, I'm just thinking, a patient calls in and they say, "Hey, do you take my
Mhm.
vision plan?" And the answer is not no. The answer is,
Mhm.
well, we'll help you get out of network benefits to see if you can get reimbursed.
Mhm.
So it
Yes.
changes. I think that definitely changes the perception in the patient's mind. I feel like a lot of them can hear no and just, turn off the phone, just hang up right there and
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
But you're saying not only is it a better patient experience, but you will also help them. You're going to take the workload off of the shoulders. You're going to help them see what they can get reimbursed for out of
Yep.
network, and
Mhm.
you're going to help them through that whole process. So I think that's
Yes.
definitely a way to take, like, the pressure off of a patient, seeing that.
Yeah, they don't want the extra paperwork.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, we're not trying to make it harder for them. We're trying to make it
Yeah.
easier.
Do you feel like, in terms of well, I guess let me ask you. So you went through that transition. You said it was about 3 months, beginning to end.
Hmm.
You now have that freedom in your practice. What does the practice look like today? How has that change impacted your practice today?
Well, I mean, I feel like I can kind of go to work and not feel like I'm having to rush through my day. I can spend time with patients, and I am kind of aware because I do tend to chat with my patients for longer than I otherwise would have if I was in another kind of practice. But I can spend that time like building the relationships, learning about their families, and it's really fantastic now that it's been 8 years that I've just about 8 years that I've been in practice, because I'm really seeing patients year after year, and I feel like now I'm starting to see old friends where they tell me about their trips, and I see their kids who were in middle school go off to college. And it's really awesome too. And not just with the patients, but I also feel like with my team, people are happier. I have an office manager now, but other than that, I still have a front desk and an optician. I didn't have to hire a ton of people, so it still has the kind of family feel. And so again, with the amount of patients, you can have less patients. You don't have to have more staff members, and it creates just a whole overall office culture, which I think there's a lot to be said for that too. I think having a good time at work, enjoying the people that you're around and spending your day with. We do a lot of like celebrating at the office. We'll have meeting goals, but also like birthdays, work anniversaries, engagements. There's a lot of fun things to celebrate, and I feel like we really try to build that as a team. And our patients like seeing that too. We'll bring them
Yeah.
up pieces of cake when we're having it, and they like that. So.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned you put aside an hour for each patient, right?
Yep,
Which
yep, yep.
is
A little bit less
less
for kids, but
less
for
stress across the board for everybody.
yeah.
Patient feels like they're getting plenty of time. You don't have the pressure of having to churn through
Mm-hmm.
more volume of patients in order
Mm-hmm.
to get the results that you want in the practice,
Mm-hmm.
and just a much feels like just a much better way to work each and every day.
That's nice.
Probably a better experience owning a practice when you can do that and have more
Mm-hmm.
control over all these different things.
I think so.
We talked about it's increased from a financial standpoint. It's increased your revenue per patient, so you saw a financial benefit there. Alongside, it impacted your cost of goods. It sounds
Mm-hmm.
like, uh,
Absolutely.
and is that from just not having to use the labs that are approved by the insurance companies? I'm pretty ignorant here when it comes to the side of it. So how exactly did that impact your cost of goods?
Yeah, so we insurance companies required us to use their labs for certain products, and then they kind of gave better discounts on using certain products that they recommended. Might not necessarily have been the products that we recommend. So it's a trade-off with do you use the products that you recommend to get a lower reimbursement? Or do you use the ones that they recommend, but then you end up having more chair time and remakes and maybe a not happier patient? And then same with like frames, they have certain frames that they recommend or give patients better deals on. So then if the patient gets the better deal, then you don't get as much reimbursement. So now we just offer good quality frames that are, we like to support independent in our frames and lenses too. And then using the independent labs, not only gives a better quality product that I think gives patients better vision and better, adaptation to their lenses. And that creates like an overall better experience for the patient too, because they're not coming back and we're not having to do remakes, and they're happier with the vision that they get from their glasses. So that lowers like chair time, it lowers cost of goods, staff time with them on the phone, and then just overall everybody's satisfaction, because nobody wants to have an unhappy patient. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any
yeah.
lessons that you learned, or are there any things that you would have done differently going through that experience now looking back?
I probably would have just started cold start from the very beginning, not taking insurance. I thought that was the only way. So, if I would have known that we could have done it this way and that it was possible, then I wouldn't have been bothered with it from the very beginning. So,
Okay, interesting. So
yeah,
no regrets.
no.
I do want to ask about that because I hear this and I say, man, this is so straightforward, so simple. It feels like a better way to do business. I would have just cold started with this business model, right? I would have just said,
Mm-hmm.
forget the vision plans. I would have just cold started
Mm-hmm.
from scratch, having more of a fee for service, direct care approach. Now, I'm not in optometry.
Mm-hmm.
Should cold starts consider going this route from the very beginning? If so, how do they do it best?
Absolutely. I think it is a way for us as private practice to separate ourselves and be a little bit different. And, I think even if you look at kind of practices that have been around for a while, private practices that have been in the insurance, there's a lot of frustration out there. And I think you can kind of see that. So I think if we can kind of separate ourselves and have more practices going in the direct care way, we can kind of just do a better job overall. So I think that just kind of learning how to explain it properly is the most important thing. And it just creates an easier startup because you're not having to get on panel with all these different insurances and figure out how to submit. And then you have to pay a service to submit and then hire somebody else to get your claims for like these really starry reimbursements. It might take a little bit more explanation at the beginning and staff training, but once everybody's on board, even your team can really see what a big difference it makes for patients too. So it's once they understand it too, it's not hard for them to explain because they can see the difference.
Yeah. I feel like one of the reasons that I have heard that more optometrists, younger optometrists don't necessarily want to get into practice ownership is because of the perceived complexity of how everything works, especially with how to deal with all the vision plan stuff. And this is definitely a way to sort of simplify that and have one less party, or I guess group of parties to deal with, and one less layer of paperwork and processes and stuff to follow up on. Let me play the other side of that though. A counter argument to that would be that vision plans are an important way for a cold start to get volume into the practice. It's sort of a marketing expense to help that cold start get started, to get patients familiar with that practitioner, with the value of that practice. It may be a marketing expense on the back end because they're not paying for it up front, and it may be a little bit larger than they may have anticipated, but it's still a way for them to get at least some patient volume into the practice and establish themselves. What would you say to that?
I would say that's a pretty steep marketing expense, that you could probably lose quite a bit of that and still be able to pay for other marketing. But and I think that's what they want us to think. They want you to think that you have to use their plans to be able to get patients in the door. But I was really cautious and I guess meticulous about asking patients, every patient who came in, especially in the early years, about how they heard from us. And I don't have those numbers right now, but it was a very low percentage that heard of us from their insurance plans. So and I do feel like part of it now, maybe more than ever, insurance plans are directing they own practices too, not private practices, but they're directing toward patients towards their corporate practices. So even less, if you were to hear about a plan or about an office from an insurance plan, your practice as a private practice is not going to be one of the number one practices. So, as a new cold start practice, I think it's better to get out in the community and, do the fairs and do the senior healthcare fairs and, sponsor a baseball team and go to the events and, give out juice boxes or something, get out there and see your face in the community. If you have kids, like go to their schools and do things. And that's how you can get your name out there. And then you get the word of mouth referrals and not having to pay for that insurance marketing, which that's what they tell you, but it's not an effective marketing solution.
Yeah, that what is it? The client or the patient acquisition cost is really high if you're going that route, and you don't really notice it because it is coming off the back end. It's not a front end expense that you're seeing on your profit and loss. It's just a lower collected revenue.
Much lower, yeah.
And maybe again putting the time and energy into just learning marketing a little bit as just part of getting that business up and running. And
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
because how many more patients, like you said before, do you have to see to be able to offset that? So you're having to bring so many more people in through the doors to be able to offset. You could probably see 4 patients to 1 direct care patient. So it's if you lose that and just get that 1 patient, that's all you need. So
yeah. And as a consumer, I can definitely say, we are conditioned to look to our vision plans, even though we'll search, optometrists near me as a way to find you. We're probably conditioned to think, okay, we got to find someone within our vision plan and turn to that next. So the more direct care fee-for-service models that are available, the more that you're communicating it, the more that you're marketing it, the more that people like me are going to see like, oh, that's a normal way of doing business. That's something I should look for.
Right. And it's not like people go all the time, it's once, twice a year or so. to their eye care. So for most people, it's affordable, and having the lower prices across the board, I think it's overall more affordable. And I think that if we can get more people out there doing it, it'll become more, like you said, accepted by patients and the consumer. And I think I would love to see that happen.
Yeah. One last question, and I'll kind of wrap up here is for those that are wondering, are unsure about the future of independent private practice optometry, knowing that they have to deal with all this and seeing the lack of growth in reimbursements and all that, what would you say to those optometrists that are not quite as thrilled or uncertain about the future of optometry, or maybe someone that's uncertain about wanting to get into practice ownership because of that?
Mm-hmm. I would say it's worth a try doing it as direct care. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You can keep continuing the way that you're continuing. If you're not happy, I mean, it's worth it to try and change your situation. So
yeah, I think so. Well, I think this has been phenomenal. The intentionality that you put, you realize it's your business. You can make decisions in your business. You saw something that you weren't comfortable with. You wanted to take it a different direction, and you took some risks, and it ended up working out. But I love the intentionality and these decisions that you made and the way you went about it. I love the business model. I think it makes so much sense. I'm not in optometry, so I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I think it just makes so much sense from a patient standpoint. And so I really appreciate your time and coming on here and sharing your experience of going through that and why you went through that. I'll put a link to all your articles in the show notes so people can find you at least through there. But other than that, if a listener wants to find you or follow you or get to know more about what you're doing, how can they do that?
Well, I have a website. It's directcaredifference.com. There's a lot of information about that. And if you look at the bottom, there's links to my Facebook page, and also YouTube, where I've been putting out I'm in the process of creating, some tips and tricks and ways to make it more, possible, I suppose, for, people to get to a direct care system. So if you want to hear some kind of tips on how to move in that direction, you can check out my YouTube channel at the bottom of our website. So, but yeah, I wanted to say I really appreciate you having me on here today. I'm excited to be able to share my story. And if there's anything I can do to inspire people to move in this direction or any questions people have, I'm really happy to be there for people because I think it's just a fantastic way to practice and a way to move forward optometry. So thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I love the conversation. For the listener, we'll put all of that in the show notes. So you can, on whatever device you're listening to, just scroll down and you'll find it there. Or you can go to the education hub on my website, optometrywealth.com. But we will catch you all on the next episode. We appreciate your time. In the meantime, take care.
Want more resources to help master your money? Check out the Education Hub on Evon's website at optometrywealth.com. Evon Mendrin is a certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a California registered investment advisor. All opinions of Evon and his guests are their own. This show is for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for specific investment, legal, tax, or other decisions. Clients of OWA may own securities mentioned on this show.